Hi guys, how's it going? Just give me a second here. Someone was playing with my cane and lowered it down a bit for me.
Ready?
What?
Can I lock it?
Yeah. So, just have to lower it down a little bit here. One more. That's better. Just gonna use my cane because I'm gonna plan on doing some walking here. So anyway. So, waving you all over the place. As you can see, it's another John Kerry day here. And there's a big lineup here at the airport. And you can't catch a flight here. You can watch FedEx load if you want. Western Canada Aviation Museum. I got it here. Yeah. We're here for one reason. Well, two reasons. One is I love the airplanes, but this right here. This area closed for a wedding setup. Walker Super Universal. We're going to get in line for the plane to go into the fortress. Fairchild Super 71. And look how far back the pilot sits. Standing in line because it's an hour wait, so might as well go now because it's never going to be shorter. Once we go through, get footage of the outside and the inside, and we'll see how much energy I have left to do a tour of the rest of the museum. Movie made on the Avro Aero, about a 2-hour, and the movie was filmed in Winnipeg, and there's only 3 or 4 hangars along here that are big like this, the old style hangars from back in the 40s, or maybe even earlier, and this may have been one of the ones they used for filming. So the bride and groom are right under the plane where the oil can drip on them.
were green. Yep. And then your pilot and your co-pilot were officers. So they were somewhere in age between 22 to 25 years old. Your radio operator and your 4 gunners in the back were between 17 to 19 years old. And they were all made technical sergeants because the higher your rank was, the better you were treated in a prisoner of war camp. And you talk about the awesome price you paid, 10 kids on each plane, and 100 planes left England on a Thursday morning in October to bomb the Schweinfurt ball bearing factories. And that night, when they say failure to return, that night out of 100, 1 came home. So that'll give you, and they had to fly 35 missions before they could go home. And a mission was if you made it all the way to the target, dropped your bombs and went back. If you got halfway there, had a mechanical, or were shot up and had to turn around, that didn't count. So 35 different times you had to get up and go out that door before you could be considered to be able to go home to the States. And I've talked to lots of guys that stayed on for another 2 and have done upwards of 50 missions before they went back. My husband had a friend who, after his father passed away, we found a little notebook similar to this one at the bottom of his toolbox. And in the beginning was this beautiful old English handwriting. And he would write the target, so Berlin today, the time to the target and back, 16 hours, the names of all the crew, what the bomb load was. We were taking 1,000 pounds or 500 pounds, 500-pound bombs, because they could take up to 8,000 pounds with them. And then he would have things like, we really gave Hitler hell today. As the missions went on, his handwriting got to the point where you almost couldn't read it. And he would say things like, we lost the new guy today, didn't even know his name. Or the plane next to them went down, no chutes. And so you could just watch everything deteriorate. And when he came home, he put that in the bottom of the toolbox, never talked about it to his family, just went back to his regular life. They didn't discover it until after he passed away. We didn't recognize PTSD during that war. So these guys, to a man, and people ask me what my connection is to the B-17. I have no connection. I never had anybody that flew on one. I never knew anybody in the Air Force or the Army Air Corps of the time. My father was in the Navy. My husband's father was on the ground. He was there when they took the bridge at Ramada. So for my section, for me, flying on this aircraft is to honor that generation. I can't repair a destroyer and take it on tour. So it's to say thank you for that generation that went off to war. Canadian, American, all of our allies, if they had not done what they did, we would not be living in a free country. So, and it's also for the women that were at home. My mother said she would go for months with no messages. Then suddenly a whole packet of letters would show up at the same time. And then she says, but I still couldn't breathe easy because those letters might be a month old. So I still didn't know if he was still okay. And even after the war was over, they had my sister, and the war's over, and my dad's ship's going to be coming into Rhode Island. So she got on a bus in Indiana with my sister. She went to Rhode Island to see him. Hey, the war's over. You'll be home in a couple of months. So she got pregnant with me. Then my dad got shipped to Japan as part of the occupation forces. So by the time he got home and saw me for the first time, I was already 3 months old. So my mom said even after it was over, he didn't come home. And there was a song back then called We Won't Be Home, We Won't Come Back Until It's Over there. My dad was gone for 4 years. So it'll give you an idea of what these guys did. So it's not just for the plane, it's for all of those guys that went out day after day and put their life on the line, knowing that they had to stand between us and what was going on or we wouldn't be free. And something that I thought was really cool, we have 2 German guys that come over every year. They actually come from Berlin. They belong to our group, and they come over to fly with us for 2 weeks every year. And I asked them last year, I said, you know, we used this plane to bomb the hell out of Germany, and we bombed Berlin, practically off the face of the earth. So what's your fascination with the plane? And they said, you don't understand. This plane gave me the right to grow up in a free country too. You know, which I thought was very, emotional. So when you go out there, I want you to think about the guys out there. Now, some things about the plane. In the back, you're going to be walking on a nice wooden floor. That wasn't there. They stood on the ribs of the plane. Your 17 to 19-year-old kid back there, standing on the ribs of the plane. All of the shell casings come back into the fuselage because you had to recycle that brass. So now you're walking around on hot marbles. The windows in the back, they took the windows out because they were crossed up, and it would make the difference between seeing a fighter at a greater distance. So now you've got the slipstream. And it's actually 70 degrees Fahrenheit when you're up there. 70 degrees below Fahrenheit. So you're walking around on the ribs, you've got the hot marble effect, you've got the slipstream, you're freezing to death and people are trying to kill you, and you've got to go up 35 different times before you can call it quits. Took a hell of some, and then when they came home, all the veterans that we've had the privilege of talking to, I always tell them, you guys are my heroes. And they said, you know what, I just did what everybody else was doing, or my country needed me. They never say, oh, I was a hero for doing it. It was always just, well, my country needed me. I needed to go and do it. So when you meet anybody that's ever got a World War II cap on, says World War II veteran, stop and shake their hand, because if it wasn't for them, we may all be speaking instead of French and English, and where I live, Spanish and English, we'd be all speaking German. When you go through the plane, if you've got questions, come back and find me. My pilot calls me the plane princess. I have been flying with this aircraft now for 29 years, and you're just inside the door to your museum as you're going back in, there's a poster in there with the 17 and the Heinkel that's dated 1996. I was here with the plane in 96. And you guys, you're going to see 13 50 caliber machine guns in there. Okay? And you can see 12 of them from the outside of the aircraft. There's one that you will only see when you're in the radio operator's compartment. And those people whiz right past it. It's up in the ceiling. So if you lost your top turret gun, you could take the window out, pull this gun down on a rail and shoot it out through the top. Because as soon as the fighters knew that you weren't covered from one direction, they would just keep coming at you. Those B-17s, capable of flight. It doesn't make us better than any of the others out there. It makes us luckier. We just happened to be in a place where we found a piece or a part that they would have loved to have had. So we're proud of the fact that we have everything, but we are the only ones, when you go up the ladder, you're going to have to crawl for just a little space, and then you're going to come up and you'll see the pilot, the co-pilot. You're going to actually walk right through the top turret gun. We're the only ones that have a top turret gun. We have the original Cheyenne tail section, and we found them on a B-17 on top of a gas station in Oregon. After the war, this guy bought a B-17 as scrap, put it on top of his gas station, and he called it the bomber station. And you drove up under the wings of the plane to get your gas. One of our members spotted it and, got permission to crawl up on the roof, realized it was up there. Well, his plane had been extremely vandalized over the years, so we went in, took measurements, went back to Mesa, made all the parts he needed, went back, and in 24 hours we gave him new doors, new windows, cleaned out his plane, and a lot of money, and we came home with the parts we got. So, because people ask me, where do you find parts? You'd be amazed. In the old days, we'd go to some place like this, and some farmer would come up and say, hey, you know what, I brought a propeller home after the war, and I never did anything with it. Would you like to have it? We don't do that anymore. Parts are really scarce. Every single thing that's done on that aircraft is done by a volunteer. We do our own skin work, our own plexiglass, everything with the exception of a complete engine rebuild. That we have to send out. People say, where do you get the tires? There are no B-17 tires anymore, so we modified it and we actually have C-130 tires. Talking about the damage that they took, I just read a book, and a true story. The fighters, right behind the back door, it's kind of a blind spot, and the fighters just kept coming in, wave after wave, hitting them right in that spot, till they'd almost severed the tail from the rest of the aircraft. The crew took their parachute harnesses and tied the tail to the rest of the fuselage. And the tail gunner started to crawl forward, and then he realized it was going to affect the waist and balance. He volunteered to stay back there, and they actually got home and landed it. And there's another really fascinating story. She was called the Phantom 17. There's this 17 coming in across the channel, heading for the cliffs of Dover, but she's too low. And there's farmers in a field, and they're cutting hay with sickles, and they see her coming, and they think 10 brave kids are about to die. They'd already thrown the machine guns overboard. They'd already jettisoned the ball. They'd got rid of everything that had any weight. And she's still steady sinking. Well, there's a phenomenon called a cliff updraft. And just as she got there, it just lifted her up like magic, and she slid into this field for a perfect wheels up landing. But nobody got out. So the farmers took their sickles and they hacked their way in, and they found 10 parachutes, 10 leather jackets with crewmen's names on them, and a half-eaten Hershey bar laying on the radio operator's table, and nobody on board. They assumed the crew probably bailed over the channel without chutes because they were afraid that they were so low the chutes would drag them down. They were drowned. Their bodies were never recovered. But after that, the crews always used to say, never bail out, she'll go home without you. So after that, they rode them home in the worst battle damage that you can imagine. So when you go out there, just, the plane is awesome, but also think about those young boys that were out there flying them. And if you have questions, come back and ask me. Like I said, my pilot calls me the plane princess, so. Or I'm the zookeeper because I'm in charge.
You ever shoot the machine guns?
No, because we have government officials just like yours are. And we have what we call the FAA, and they have no sense of humor whatsoever. They said we could take on Mexico and win, so they won't let us have real ammunition. The guns are real. The bullets are real, but they have no powder in them. Okay? And they made us change out the gun barrels, so the gun barrel itself is not real, so it could not be fired. And in this one, I have a chair for takeoff and landing, but the rest of the flight I stand. I stand between the two machine guns, and technically the loadmaster's job is to watch, we look out the windows when the engine starts. I'll yell again. The loadmaster's position, we're seated for takeoff and landing, but the rest of the flight we stand between the two machine guns in the back. And we're watching out the windows. We watch the engines on start because the pilot can only see the two inside engines. Everything else on the aircraft is blind to him, inside and out. So during the war, they had 4 gunners back there. Well, today, we wouldn't have anybody back there, so the FAA allows us to have a loadmaster. So we watch the engines on startup. We're looking for oil, fuel, fire. Anything going wrong, we're watching for the guy in the Cessna that thinks he can fly formation with a B-17 because that's extremely dangerous. We watch for the tail wheel rotation. If it doesn't go up, we don't get excited. If it doesn't go down, then I get out the hand crank and crank it down because it's not quite fun to land without it. Pilot thinks I'm a flight attendant, so when you go across the bomb bay, it's literally only that wide, and the doors open at 110 pounds, and I run back and forth across there. I have a 25-foot extension on my headset, so I can go from the toolbox you'll see at the tail all the way up to what we call the green monster, which is that gun you're going to walk through to take up snacks, whatever, to the pilots. My one pilot kept saying, we have the world's worst flight attendant. She didn't even bring me an in-flight meal. So the next, and he flies for Southwest Airlines. So the next time I flew out to meet the plane, I was on Southwest Airlines, and the girls, we had such a great time. We took the air sick bags, spelled the crew's name in crayon. And then I brought airplane stickers. We decorated them with airplane stickers. I had a little toy to put in each bag, and then we filled them full of the peanuts and the stuff. And when he asked for his in-flight meal, I took and told him it was Pilot Happy Meals. So he does it. So he quit calling me his flight attendant. Now he calls me the plane princess. So when he meets me in Brandon, I'm going to meet him at the plane with a tiara.
Yeah, of course.
Yes. So we have, as a crew, we are like a big family. We have so much fun.
Do another slow pan here for you. And provided I still have some energy left, we'll go through the museum and I'll see what I can do to get closer footage of some of the aircraft. Yep, she's a good woman. Saved my energy. She's standing in line for me. If you want to go in the plane, you have to stand in line, but if you're just going to walk on the outside, you can just go and tell them and they'll let you walk around outside, around the aircraft. I would like to go in. So Amber's standing in line for me. So hopefully I'll have enough energy to go through when we're all done. Except I keep standing up and talking to people because there's a lot of people fascinated with this aircraft. So, you can see the big boxcar behind me there. This museum's been here for a long time. And I've been through it a few times. When I worked up north, the helicopter company that flew us used to have an annual Christmas party, and they would have it upstairs in the it's like a lounge area with an area for the kids to play, interactive displays and stuff, with a good view of the airfield. So it was a good place to have a Christmas party, and I'm looking at this, and if I had known they did this back then, I would have had my wedding here. This would have been awesome. Never thought of it though. Anyway, we'll get back to you in a bit. Take it easy. We'll be back.